Is God anti-gay?
Okay, so right away, I think it's a loaded question. Is God anti-gay? I think immediately you say, no, God is not anti-gay. God is not people. God is not set against, angrily, wrathfully, standing in heaven with a magnifying glass, shooting ants, kind of thing. But even with that, you need to nuance that a little bit. It's a complex question, so it can't just get a yes or no answer. I think the best way to answer the question is really how we answer the question about any sin or anything that the Bible would say is not what God wants for us. So I think the best way to say that is God is pro us and God is anti-sin. God is pro us and God is anti-sin. Because you look at the cross, what he did on the cross. You see that same posture when he is basically exhausting his wrath on Jesus Christ the Son. When the Father is exhausting his wrath, and when he is looking at the sin of the world on the Son, and he is just pouring out his judgment on them, at that point, is God anti-something? Well, yes. Is God pro something? Well, yes. God is pro us, and God is anti-sin. We see that when Paul writes in Romans chapter 5, he says in verse 6, he says, while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. So look at just how it talks about us. It says weak and ungodly. Verse 7 says, for one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even die. But God shows his love for us while we were still sinners. So now we're weak, ungodly, sinners. It says Christ died for us. Since therefore we have been justified by his blood, much more shall we be saved by him from the wrath of God. For while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God. So just look at the words it used. Weak, sinner, ungodly, enemy. Yet God loved us. God loved us and did what? He justified us by shedding the blood of his Son. So on the cross right there, it's almost like God sees you, but he sees the sin that's on you. Right? It's almost like dirt we've placed on ourselves. And when God looks at us, he sees things that he loves and things that he does not love. He loves us, but we've got sin on us. So how is he going to solve this problem where he can fully love us, fully be in fellowship with us? He's got to remove the sin. And the way to remove the sin is to judge it, to condemn it. And what happened on the cross is he who knew no sin, as the Bible says in 2 Corinthians, became sin. God made Jesus sin, which means he took all of our sin off, like all that dirt came off of us and was on Christ. So now when God looks at us, he doesn't see any of the sin that he was opposed to. He was opposed to it when he looked at the Son. And you see really the same posture when Jesus Christ died. He is pro us, right? And he is anti-sin. When Jesus is being crucified, his arms are stretched out, right? A soldier grabs his arm and nails it into the cross. And Jesus prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. What is he doing there? He is pro those soldiers in his prayer, right? I mean, who prays for people who are executing them? Nobody stands in a firing squad, right, with a bag over their head, waiting for the rifles to shoot the bullets at their chest. Nobody sits there and prays for the people about to shoot them, right? When the guns are pointed at you, you either run, you fire back, but your option usually isn't to pray. That's usually not what you do. But yet, this is Jesus' posture. He prays for those. Now, does that mean he's not against what they're doing? He is against what they're doing. Because he says, Father, forgive them. He still sees it as a sin. It's something they need to be forgiven for. So right there, we see in the cross, God the Father is pro us and anti-sin. Jesus, when he's being crucified, is pro us and anti-sin. Paul, in his ministry, in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, he has this same posture, which isn't strange that if God the Father is this way, God the Son is this way. Paul, one of the primary teachers in the first century, was this way in his ministry. In 1 Corinthians 6:11, when Paul lists that big list of sins that are sexual sins and other sins, it said, such were some of you, but you were washed and you were sanctified. What is Paul telling us there? I ministered to you guys before you ever agreed with my message. Right? I came to you guys. I gave of my time, myself. I loved you guys, and then you came to follow this message. Right there, what is Paul saying? He is pro them, but his message was still true, and so he was anti their sin. You see the same thing with Jesus. Jesus hangs out with this guy named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is a bad dude, has a bad rap. He's a greedy tax collector. All he wants is money, and at the core of who he is just greedy and arrogant. But Jesus goes to this guy's house. So Jesus is pro this guy. Now, does Jesus love his greed? Does Jesus love that he is basically defrauding people and taking advantage of people? No. Jesus goes into this house with this guy, eats with them, and it says that this man gives up his greed. He says, I'm going to sell my possessions, right? I'm going to make things right. And Jesus says, this is what I'm here for, to seek and to save the lost. Right there, seek and to save the lost tells us Jesus knows we're lost, right? He knows there's a problem, and he is against that problem. But he is for us. He wants to rescue us. And Daniel, when he was in Babylon, had the same mentality. You think of what Daniel existed, in. If we jump to Daniel 4, Daniel almost had his friends killed. They didn't worship the idol. And so his 3 friends, almost died in a fire furnace. So you think right there, if someone hurts your friends, are you going to be happy with them? No, right? Well, this king not only almost killed his friends, he also defeated his people, the people of Israel, took him captive, forced him to learn about astrology, pagan philosophy, made him a eunuch, which is very uncomfortable, and changed his name. So there's no reason for Daniel to love this guy. This guy's the enemy, no way. But a dream comes to the king, and it disturbs him, and he doesn't like it. And he thinks this dream probably is against him. So Daniel comes, and he's about to interpret this dream. Now, if you think at this moment, this is a perfect time. If Daniel wants to hurt this guy, it's a perfect time to kind of dig the knife in, right? But it's not what he does. In Daniel chapter 4, Daniel realizes that this is not a good dream for the king. That this is going to mean that the king is actually humiliated, that he is going to lose his mind in a sense, and he's going to eat grass. His hair's going to grow. He's basically going to become a cow. He's going to be humiliated. That's how I think of it. And Daniel, you think, would look at that moment. This is the guy that killed some of my people, took them captive, almost killed my friends, made me a eunuch, changed my name, and taught me pagan philosophy. And Daniel says this in Daniel chapter 4. It says verse 19. He says, my Lord, and he's talking to the king. The respect there is just amazing. My Lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. What is he saying? I don't want this to be true of you, king, because I'm pro you. This is the king who's done nothing good. This king is in no way indebted Daniel to himself. He's only hurt Daniel, really, and Daniel's people. And Daniel says, I don't want this to happen to you. I don't want bad to happen to you. And so when we deal with this issue of, is God anti-gay, it's too simple of a question for a simple answer. We have to be compassionate like God is. Yes, God is anti all of our sin, whether it be the sin, a sexual sin like homosexuality, whether it be a sexual sin of lust or greed or being a liar or being disobedient to your parents. All of our sins, God is anti those, but God is pro us. Like, God is not looking to destroy us, but to rescue us. And we have to have that same posture, just like Daniel did, and be compassionate to those people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think of when we take a stand and we have conviction on issues like this, there's going to be pushback. I mean, there always is going to be pushback from the world. And look, sometimes I know that the pushback is not just gentle, it's nasty, and it hurts, and it's personal. And I think even then, even though it's very, very difficult, we need to feel compassion, sort of like Daniel and his friends, but being compassionate toward them, because they don't really know, especially if they do not believe the same God that we do. They don't know what they're doing in a lot of sense. They're only reflecting the world that they've been raised in, and so they're doing what is absolutely natural for them, but is unnatural for us as believers. Does that make kind of sense?
And we don't want to, think of it this way. A Christian, even when the guns are pointed at them, we never point our guns at the people pointing guns at us. In that sense. I mean, we look at them as not enemies to be defeated, but people to be rescued. And that's the heart of Jesus. That's the heart of God, right? And it's a hard dilemma to be anti-sin and pro-people. But that's how we have to deal in that delicate balance. of any of our friends. You know, Jesus was so incredibly good at being loving to sinners, right? But yet standing for his convictions. And he was almost whimsical, if you will. There was just an attraction. People would come to him who didn't necessarily believe he was God, but they were drawn by his love. Think about how awesome that would be if we could do that. If we could be so pro people, they would be like, I know you disagree with me, but there's something about you. I sense the warmth and the love from you. I want to hear how you disagree with me. I mean, that's when we got it. That's when we're really, living like Jesus, when we have that kind of compassion. We can't look at it as a warfare time, like let's hurt the enemy. It's a total wrong way to look at things. We're not looking to defeat, we're looking to rescue.